Hey guys, hold the stove again. As Hashgacha Pratis would have it, I had an opportunity to catch a live shot or a live feed of Trump today. He was sitting, I guess he's somewhere in Scotland. He's visiting, I guess, Scotland. I think his mom is from there, if I'm not mistaken, right? Mac something. I think her last name is. So his dad is not from Germany, but his mom is Scottish descent. So, and he was talking about it, the whole thing with Israel, everything like that. And he said two things that stood out to me. He said, the parents. I met with the parents of the kids who have been hostage, and even some of the parents said, my kid is not alive, but it's very important that their body be returned, right? And he said, it's almost, you almost get the feeling it's as important as if their kid was alive. Meaning, it's very, very important for Jews to give the body a proper burial, folks. It's a very spiritual thing. It's very important on a spiritual level. Like the way he said it, it was like he goes, the way the parents describe it, it's as if, or as important as if the kid came back alive, right? And they asked me, Mr. President, please, help us make this happen, right? And he said, Hamas, basically, it's almost like they hardened themselves. He used the word hardened. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Right? It's like Paro, that story when Paro hardened his heart before Moshe Rabbeinu was, so to speak, negotiating with him, let the people go, and you thought he was going to do it. You thought this whole thing was going to happen, and he didn't. And even when there's like more threats things that were threatened upon him, that he knew more things were coming, more destruction, more this, more that. In this case, not going to be such a good result for, like, literally the people in Gaza, right? As a result of all the collateral stuff, just like the war, right? Nobody wants that, right? Except for apparently Hamas. So they've hardened themselves. That's exactly what he said. And then the craziest thing, guys, you know what he said after that? He said, out of nowhere, almost seemingly out of nowhere, I didn't even expect him to say this. He said, Israel 20 years ago pulled out of this place. And there was supposed to be peace, right? With the assumption that there was going to be peace now, right? We gave them the greenhouses, we gave them all that land, we gave them this, we gave them that, everything that was cultivated over there, farms, beautiful. It was beautiful, folks. And obviously they destroyed everything and they turned it into hell, right? And then he says, I know, and obviously he's like the prime minister of Israel at that time. And then he kind of pauses, makes kind of a little bit of a face, like he normally does. And he's like, I know who it was, but I'm not going to say the name. Made a bit of a mistake. He made a blunder, basically. My friends, we all know who it was. But you see, Trump obviously didn't want to speak, so to speak, ill of the dead, right? We know who the prime minister was, who did this at the time. But folks, it's interesting that he said that this week, because we are coming up on the 20th anniversary, according to the Hebrew calendar, of what they called in Israel the disengagement, the disengaging, right? It's like somebody's supposed to be married, and they're engaged, right? So it's disengaged or unengaged, right? Folks, this was not a disengagement. This was a calamity, right, for the Jewish people. And it was probably the most recent of the Tisha B'Av calamities, not just the destruction of the two temples, but we had other calamities on that day, expulsion of the Jews from Spain, the beginning of essentially the beginning of the Holocaust, putting Jews on the trains, or actually the decision to, I think it happened at the Wannsee conference, if I'm not mistaken. Other things, bevy of other things, guys. Pogroms on this day, in Jewish history, and the pullout from Gush Katif, the expulsion of, I think it was like 6,000 Jews from, it was either 6,000 or 60,000, I can't remember the number. It was a lot of Jews. It was a good amount of Jews from Gush Katif out of their homes. Was a tragedy, my friends. It started in March or April. The whole political process started in March of 2005, and basically, police and troops moved in July during these 3 weeks that we were just in, and then it culminated on August 10th in the afternoon, in the morning and in the afternoon, and we know that the temples burned until Hatzot on August 10th. That's why there's this whole thing. We can't eat meat until after Hatzot. We can't take a haircut and shave until after Hatzot. We can't, if we want, drink wine until after Hatzot on August 10th, right? So yeah, guys, and this is the 20th anniversary of that, and Trump brought this up, and he said Israel removed people from there. They completely pulled out militarily, civilians, thinking that there would be peace. Obviously, we see the result, folks. So far I haven't heard any, politician or any person really who's in any kind of public eye, except for maybe myself. I brought this up on October 8th. Folks, who have been listening to this channel, I brought this up many times, that the pullout from Gush Katif, this, what happened on October 7th, is a direct result, not an indirect result, of what we did in August 2005. What the Israeli government at that time. Folks, but I'm a nobody. I'm a dude with 1,500 subscribers on YouTube, who's shadow banned, right? And who has 3,000 some odd followers on Twitter, who's shadow banned on X, and with 2,500 on Rumble, who's shadow banned. I'm shadow banned on all those platforms, guys. So I'm basically a nobody in that relation, numbers wise, folks. So the only other person I've heard mention that this event, seminal, I guess, event of Jews being pulled out of Gush Katif, of Gaza, led to October 7th. Trump said it today, my friends. He said that Hamas hardened their heart, and he said that this led to that led to this. And he didn't want to say the name of the prime minister out of respect for the deceased. We'll say it if you want me to say it. It was Ariel Sharon. Folks, even now, I still don't know why he did it. We speculate maybe why he did it, this, that, American pressure, some kind of blackmail. We don't know. It's pointless now to, speculate. We'll find out soon enough. But my friends, we know, and it's ironic because the people who are against Israel, Gaza has been under siege. My friends, it's just hilarious because we pulled out of there. So what's the siege? So if it wouldn't be under siege, meaning if Israel wouldn't, make a border where military is, right, standing guarding. Well, we found out that they weren't guarding it so well, but let's just say they were guarding it until October 7th, right? The siege was created by Hamas, right? It didn't have to be under siege. It didn't have to be whatever the hell they call it. Even though we know it wasn't under siege. We have footage that there's like restaurants there and hotels and amusement parks and blah 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 and all the rest of it. Folks, it's total BS, right? It's not under siege. It's not under siege at all in the least bit. But let's just say it is. It's not our fault. Why? Because you can't, at the behest of the international community, pull out your people from a certain area with the hopes that there's going to be peace, to give it to someone else because, supposedly it's like their land or whatever it is, or it was part of Egypt or whatever, whatever the perception is, and then say that it was under siege, that it's like it's like a genocide camp or whatever it is, right? It's some kind of whatever, right? Open air prison, that's what it is. Folks, you can't have it both ways, you know what I mean? So, folks, Israel pulled out of there. We got Hamas. We're now 20 years later. Trump finally said it. Literally the most famous person in the entire world said, whether you like him or not, said a fact that is a glaring fact of how we got to this place that we are today. And it's amazing that he said, almost as if taking it like a page out of the Torah, like, wording, lashon from Moshe Rabbeinu, Hamas have hardened themselves, essentially hardening their hearts. And by the way, you know what he said? He said, I hope Israel, does what needs to be done. He said, I can tell you what I would do if I was them, but I don't think it's proper. He said, I don't think it's appropriate for me to say, meaning, I don't think, you know what he wants to say. It's not even appropriate as an idea, right? For the Western mind, for the so-called civilized world, to even suggest what he probably want to suggest. But he said it. Meaning he said, I hope they do what needs to be done. My friends, at this point, I spoke to an Israeli friend of mine on Shabbat. He was in the army in the late 70s, early 80s, IDF, special unit. And I said, is there a way to save these hostages, whether some of them are alive or whoever's alive, whoever's deceased, like commando style, like Entebbe style? He's like, listen, I don't think so. And he said, in my humble opinion, first of all, I don't even think any of them are alive. You're talking about like 50 people or so, if that, if maybe a few of them are alive. And he said, at this point, it's like, it may not even, listen, you want to get the bodies back, that's one thing. But as far as rescuing this and that, I don't know if there's, if there's any hope for that, right? So, my friends, B'ezrat Hashem, as I said yesterday, the Rabbanut allowed people to have weddings because they were postponed because of the Iran war. They allowed them to have weddings during, the first 2 weeks of the 3 weeks during Tammuz until just before Av. And I hope we have good news this week, and also this 9 days will be a happy week instead of a sad week. B'ezrat Hashem. All right, guys. God willing, and we'll talk soon.